Welcome to the Voices of Young People podcast, brought to you by Springtide Research Institute. In each episode, we hear directly from young people as they respond to our research and share about the issues impacting their lives. As sociologists and researchers, we see a new story unfolding for young people, one that moves beyond traditional institutional boundaries and requires careful attention to the inner and outer lives of emerging generations. At the intersection of being and becoming, it's the Voices of Young People.
And so just showing up to take a picture isn't really doing much for a community if you're not listening to who they are.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Voices of Young People podcast. This is season 2. All throughout season 2, we're going chapter by chapter through this book that we've just released called Meaning Making, the 8 Values That Drive America's Newest Generation. And one of those values that's a little bit different than previous generations is about really the importance of being relational in all aspects. If you're running an organization, or if you're working with stakeholders, if you're interested in young people at all, this value of being relational sort of flows through all of these things, and it's something that you really need to pay attention to and care about. And today I've got Alaya here to help us talk through what that means and how that looks in her life. And I'll be sharing some data from our book. But before we get into that, Alaya, why don't you say hello and introduce yourself? Thank you for being here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alaya. I'm a Latina and an artist in Northern Colorado, and I work at a flower shop as a social media coordinator.
Alaya, I'm so excited to have you here. Alaya and I actually have off and on attended the same church, but as also often happens in church, we didn't actually get to, we didn't know. It's not, I guess, entirely uncommon in the church world. You're an artist. Tell me more about that. What kind of art do you do?
So I do a wide variety of art, but my main form right now is photography. But I also do graphic design and illustration, and I dabble in watercolor and printmaking. So it just depends on my mood, I guess.
Yeah. That's so impressive. I've always, the only artistic skill I have is that I can consume it.
Yeah.
And so I've always been impressed by people who can actually make it. And to be able to do so many different mediums, that's quite the thing. Well, and so Alaya, I wanted to talk to you today about this value of being relational and why this is so important. And one of the things that we kept finding over and over in our research was that it wasn't an extra that young people were like, oh yeah, if I can, if I'm a part of a church, or if I work at a business, or if I'm volunteering at this organization and it happens to be relational, that's great. It's increasingly the thing that is sort of driving them to make decisions about where they join and participate and who they want to interact with. Maybe from your own experience, can you just sort of talk a little bit to get us started here about why that value is important to you or how it shows up in your life?
Yeah, definitely. I'm a very communication-driven person, and working in the field of social media coordinating and also teaching for a couple of years, I found that being a relational type of person and making sure that people feel valued and are seen was one of the biggest things that drew me to different places, just because if somebody is in a store or in a classroom and they're not feeling heard or understood by the people that are leading them, then they're not going to put their best foot forward, essentially. And that really drove me to make sure that relationships were probably the core of every place that I step into.
So that's fascinating. So this value of being relational comes into contact with that thing that you are sort of describing there, which is the importance also of service or thinking about others or being inclusive. One of the really key facts that came out of our research for this particular chapter is that nearly 60% of the 13 to 25-year-olds, the young people that we surveyed, indicated that it was important that organizations that they choose to participate in value and foster deep relationships that center on service towards others. So even in the survey, they were making those kinds of connections very explicitly, that it wasn't just about, there are other aspects about being relational that are about having friends and social networks and connections, but there's also this service element that sort of runs throughout this whole thing too. have you like, I know that's something that you're drawn to. Have you seen the organizations that you're involved with? Like, do they help foster that ability to be relational in that service oriented way for you?
Definitely. So Atlas, for example, the
Atlas
church here
is
in
the church,
Greeley,
yeah.
yeah, they are so good at creating a space to have relationships with other people, especially on their Sunday morning services, I guess. They prompt everyone with questions, and they really try to make sure that you're knowing the people that you're sitting around. And they really make sure to dig deep into your life. So like Kelly Cook is a great example of that. She is so close to me. She's one of my greatest friends right now. But she made sure that even when I wasn't showing up on a Sunday, or I wasn't seeing them every single week, to text me or call me and just see how I was doing. And that was so cool to see and know that people in leadership are there for you. More so than just on a Sunday morning, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that's so I'll try and be very delicate about who I'm outing with information here, but Kelly is like twice your age nearly. So when, like, for listeners out there, it's not that, Kelly's not like a peer doing this, but she's somebody who's older than you and in this leadership. Does that matter, or does that not matter? Because it would seem like having, I don't want to say like she's an adult and you're not an adult. That's not the case.
Yeah.
But having somebody in that role do that kind of work seems like it would take on extra importance.
Yeah. I think looking at it from like a leadership perspective is really important. I didn't even take into account her age, but yeah, knowing that somebody that is kind of like at a higher level than I am taking the interest in my own personal life is really neat to see.
Yeah, and Kelly's particularly good at that, digging down into people's like actual personal lives, not just staying at the surface level. All right, so you work at a flower shop. How does being relational show up there for you?
It shows up pretty much every day with social media coordinating and being on Instagram and Facebook. And even the website with the wording that you use to describe products and the wording you use at the checkout page, and just building a relationship with the customers, and also building a relationship with like the floral designers and the people in the greenhouse. Every day, my job is to make sure that their voice is being shown through social media. And so pretty much every single day I sit and talk with people about what they're feeling and how they're working through everything going on, and then how they want to be represented with their flowers or their plants. And so it's all connected at the flower shop. And we have 3 stores. So I'm trying to make sure that every voice from each 3 stores is being heard pretty much every single day. And working with the customers and making sure that they are having their needs met, and listening to their stories. Because a lot of times people buy flowers, not so much like out of necessity, but just out of wanting to have a connection with somebody. And that is really important to remember in the floral industry.
So this is counter to what I think I hear, often, I would say in the media or out there. Like I think a lot of people, say my age, old people, would think of younger people as like not like, yeah, sure, maybe they want relationships for fun and like we all want friends and stuff like that. But mostly that I think that the dominant stereotype of younger people is that they're sort of self-focused and maybe even a little narcissistic. And you're sort of explaining relational in this angle that really focuses on others. Where does that, for you, like, where does that commitment to being in relationship with others for the purpose of, lifting them up, like, how does that come into your life?
Oh gosh. I think that's just been who I've been since I was young. Even when I was like in middle school and elementary school, my mom taught ESL classes at night for a lot of immigrants. And she would take me to the classes and I would be in the children's room with the kids. And so she just said, like, hey, if you're going to be in there with them and English, like, help the children too. And so she just kind of instilled that in me. And I think just growing into who I am as a person, and then going to a school that really valued being with your community when I was in college, that really helped me see the bigger picture of it's not just me that's living in this world. It's everybody else too. And they all have stories and lives that go with them.
Yeah, it's so powerful. I mean, what you're describing there sounds almost like a religious value in some ways. This, or at least for some, I can see some people who, listening to this through a religious lens would be like, well, that sounds like a service oriented, like deep core part of your identity and your belief system.
Yeah.
When you think about the future, I don't know. So I don't know, maybe I don't know if the flower shop is your like long-term career goal, or if you think about where you're headed in your career trajectory. I mean, if I was out there thinking like, oh, I want to find somebody like Alaya, or I want her to come and work with us, what would an employer have to do, or an organization who wants you to volunteer with them, what would they have to do to sort of show you that they also care about this value in the same way that you do?
I think the biggest thing that I would be personally looking for is just seeing how they treat their employees and seeing how they treat their customers on a day-to-day basis, and really looking kind of like in the nitty-gritty of like, do they make sure that everyone's being heard on the design floor, like if it's a flower shop, and do they make sure that everyone feels comfortable in their space, and is it accessible? Can people who are in wheelchairs get into the store? Can people who are hard of hearing communicate with the cashiers and everything like that? And I really just value the communication aspect. And so if a company has great communication and they're able to express their values through their marketing and the way that they have their store set up, then that's definitely like a shoe-in for where I want to be.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Okay, because I think that helps give our listeners a sense of like, okay, like cool. Like, these are some very practical things that I can do. That's great. Let me play devil's advocate for a second. Why do we need to do this? Like, why can't you just show up, take your pictures, do your job, like go to come to the worship service? Why do we need to talk to each other? Because I feel like I can sort of hear the ghosts of previous generations, like, this is all touchy-feely stuff. Help us understand why that's so important now. Because even
that's such a big thing.
Even in our survey, we had 31 or 32% of young people said that they would take a job for less money. If there was a strong focus on relationality in the actual workplace, or if they had a friend there. So that's like, it's not just you. This is what it is. They said 32% will stay involved with an organization only if they have friends there.
Yeah.
So like, that's crazy. I mean, not crazy, but like, this is a substantial number of people.
Definitely. So I guess everyone is always like, you're so sensitive. Don't be so sensitive to how other people are reacting to you or reacting to everybody else. But that's so interesting that you said the 32% part, because I'm making way less where I'm working and working less hours, but I don't mind it because I love the people that I'm working with. And I guess the reason we need to focus on it is just that people are wanting to be heard, and more so than ever these days with social media being so prevalent and everyone having the ability to express their opinion over text and photo. And so just showing up to take a picture isn't really doing much for a community if you're not listening to who they are. And so I can post a photo of a flower every single day and caption it like, this is a cornflower, and people, they're not going to connect to that. They're not going to want to invest into wherever you're at because they don't see themselves in a caption or they don't see themselves in a photo. And that is a big driving force of, I guess, millennials and Gen Zs, that they want to see themselves represented in the places that are representing them, essentially, whether it's a business or a church.
That's so beautiful and so perfectly put. I mean, I think that that absolutely hits the nail on the head. Like, we need to do that deep relational work so we can accurately represent to our community who we are and let them find themselves in that space. It's also going to send, I think, a lot of us, including me, to the Google machines to find out what a cornflower is. So thank you for...
It's really cute. It's really pretty. It's blue.
I'm going to Google it as soon as we're done. Alaya, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for helping us to understand this. I say this a lot, but it's so important for our listeners to be able to see underneath and behind the data. In the book, we hold up a lot of like organizations that help to exemplify these values and how they put them into practice. But to hear from a young person exactly why that's important is crucial for rounding out that whole picture. So thank you for your time and being with us today.
Yeah, of course. It's been fun.
Visit springtideresearch.org to hear more voices of young people and purchase our latest book, Meaning Making: 8 Values That Drive America's Newest Generations. Sign up for our newsletter and be the first to learn about our upcoming research, including the 2020 State of Religion and Young People report coming out this fall. Today's show was produced by Marta Abuaji and TJ Birnbaum, with original music by high school student Christian Unthank. Special thanks to our guest today and all the young people whose perspectives and insights make our research possible. Remember to find us on social media at WeAreSpringtide and share your own story with the hashtag #ShowUpForYoungPeople. Thanks for listening.